I thought, like,
Are we live?
We're live. We're live.
Right, we're just, if you're just joining us, welcome. We're talking about how we are rapidly aging in the time of COVID, and how I didn't have all this gray hair a year ago, but then they were kind enough to remind me, yes, Casey, you did. So it's clearly just me. But Arson over here, who looks like he's just stepped off of a boy band audition, he's using really new shampoo that is made with the crushed tears. It's made with unicorn tears or something
of Soviet
like that.
children.
Crazy. Of Soviet tears. That's also why he's not wearing green, because he's from Russia. And
this
in Russia,
is green.
All colors are blue.
Is this green?
No,
I'm
it's not green.
I'm a little colorblind.
A little colorblind.
I am a little colorblind. Yeah.
Family, but it's on the like green and blue chart family, so it's not green.
By the way, this was a horrible idea to wear green, because green screen, anybody can do whatever they want. They can take this video.
That's fine.
And then
I'm
project
all for it.
whatever on Casey's shirt.
Why do you think I'm wearing?
That's why I got it right here. It's all good. It's all good. They can put whatever they want on there.
It's gonna be a floating head. Casey's
floating head. Done. At least maybe they'll darken my hair up.
Right.
Arson is blue. Definitely blue. Yeah.
I think you look amazing. You don't look.
I don't look a day over 80.
Aging at all.
It's good. I don't look a day over 65. It's fine. It's no problem at all. It's good.
So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a Boy Scout, so I'm prepared.
I literally do not have any beer in the house. That's terrible. I'm drinking a Rockstar here.
Oh, and you even just snapped it right now. Perfect.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
I'm really jealous. I am really jealous.
Is your glass cold too? Nice.
I approve. Good job, Andrew. I'm putting you back in the will.
I used to have a beautiful Guinness pint glass that I stole from the brewery in Dublin, but it met an unfortunate early end a couple months ago.
Nice.
After too many Guinnesses.
That's all right. That happens. Cheers. Go.
Hello, everybody joining us. Where's everybody tuning in from on this St. Patrick's Day?
I see Carrie. I am going to publicly take this opportunity to apologize to Carrie. She was supposed to receive Girl Scout cookies from me at least a week ago, if not longer. The problem is I totally forgot about it, and then I ate all the cookies. So it's a combination of two errors. Number one, user error on my part, and two, I'm out of cookies. But no worries.
You're out?
No, I am out of cookies. I've literally gone. Did you guys see how many boxes I bought? I bought 8 cases. 8 cases. They're gone. I gave some away. I ate some. I ate more. All I have left are the s'mores. So Carrie, if you're okay with the s'mores and the lemon, I can still get a package out to you, so I can do that for you. But the literally everything else is good. Now, on another positive note, the local troop has set a new record this year on boxes sold. So I'm going to take full credit for that. It was literally a mortgage payment on my part. Good times. But yeah, sorry about that, Carrie. I did not even think about that until I saw you pop in on the chat here. Good times.
Looks like we have people from all over Panama City, Australia, Canada, and throughout the United States.
Sydney, Toronto. That is great.
That time difference. Thank you.
Tammy joining from Boston. Very nice to speak with you again. Tammy, I think we're visiting soon. Unless we've already visited, then clearly it's my fault. But we'll see how that goes.
All right, perfect. So we are going to get started. We have a lot to talk about today. But first off, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. And welcome to the 9th episode of SEO for Publishers. Today, we're going to be talking about links, covering just about everything there is to know about links with our amazing expert and green marine panel, Casey Markey, Andrew Wilder, and Arsen Rabinovich. Thank you all for joining us. So we are going to have Q&A at the end as always, but please feel free and drop your questions as you have them into the Q&A box. It's separate from the chat box at the bottom of Zoom. You'll see a little button that says Q&A. Go ahead and click on that and drop your questions in there. We answer every single question that goes inside that Q&A, whether we run out of time or not. We do address it in the recap. So definitely make sure you put your questions in there. But other than that, let's get started talking about links. So Andrew, if you could please give us a good fundamental of links. So let's break it down in the simplest of terms. What is the anatomy of a link, and what's all the differences between internal links, external links, and backlinks?
So links are actually the magic that makes the internet so good. Like they're the fundamental piece of the internet that ties everything together, and it's why it's an internet. These are all the links are the connections between other pages on the internet. So in terms of the anatomy of a link, it's basically just usually a piece of text, sometimes a video or an image. You can link various things. For what we're talking about today, I think text links are probably the most common thing you're going to run into. And in the anatomy of that, in the code, it's basically you've got a word or a phrase or something, and you wrap that around with what's called an anchor tag, which would be an A in brackets. We don't need to talk about the code too much, but you're basically wrapping some text in an anchor tag, and inside that tag says what that text should link to. So it's another URL of another page. So what can you link to? There's basically three big categories. There's internal links, external links, and what we call backlinks. So internal links are on the same domain. So if you want to link from one blog post to another, that's an internal link, if they're both on your site. So internal links are the same domain, it's all on your site. External links are linking out to other sites. So if you link, if I link from nerdpress.net over to mediawise.com, that's an external link to Casey's site. Backlinks are the inverse of that. They're links from external sites to my site. So if Casey links to me, I'm getting a backlink from him. So it's not terribly complicated, actually. Those are the three options. There are nuances to links, but that's the crux of it. So you want to be paying attention to internal linking, external linking, and then getting links from others to your site.
Perfect, great breakdown. Arson, what is link building, and why is it so important in such a conversation?
So link building is where you get links to your website coming in from other websites around the web. It's important for two reasons. Backlinks help Google, help search engines. So backlinks are there for, when you link to somebody else's website, you're essentially telling somebody, hey, here's a resource on another site that is valuable and is relevant to the document that you're reading on my website, right? So for the user, it's a way for them to gain more knowledge, gain more information on the topic that's being covered, and it helps them, just like Andrew said earlier, surf around the web, right? But for Google, algorithmically, backlinks are important for two reasons. They help with contextualization, and they help with something I call third-party validation, right? Or help with authority. So contextualization. So we assume that Google uses certain information like the anchor text, the title of the link, and words that surround the link in the paragraph, the page or the document where the link is placed, to understand what the context of the page that the link is pointing to is. So if Andrew has a blog where he talks about different soups, and he says, here's an awesome recipe for a potato soup with a link pointing to my website, which has the recipe, and the anchor text is potato soup, to Google, that's going to mean a few things. It's going to mean that Andrew's page that is talking about recipes is linking out to a resource that is being mentioned or talked about on his page. The anchor text is potato soup or Arson's potato soup or whatever have you. The anchor text helps Google understand that's what Andrew is linking to. And the third-party validation aspect or the authority of it is if Andrew's site is relevant enough and has enough authority, it's going to benefit me because Andrew is essentially saying that here is a trusted piece of content on the web that is relevant to this topic. And Google uses that as signals to help it understand which pages are more relevant or answer a query better than other pages. That's the easy way of explaining that.
Casey, what does Google say about link building? Are they for link building? Are they against it?
Very good question, and it's a pretty interesting answer. Google has really a very clear publicly stated policy on linking, and I'm going to paste over the citation here in a minute. And it's been the same for a long time. And this is a direct quote. And they basically say any links intended to manipulate PageRank or a site's ranking in Google in the search results may be considered part of a link scheme and a violation of Google's webmaster guidelines, end quote. Well, and that's clearly a mouthful. Good times. I'm going to go ahead and paste all that over here for you today. Google also has one other section specifically covering link building, and that's in their core webmaster guidelines. And it says as following, quote, avoid tricks intended to improve search engine rankings. A good rule of thumb is whether you'd feel comfortable explaining what you've done to a website that competes with you or to a Google employee. Another useful test is to ask, does this help my users? Would I do this if search engines didn't exist, end quote. Again, good times. Basically what Google has been saying repeatedly is that they do not want you to build links in order to improve your search results, which is pretty hilarious. To Google, and again, this is a direct quote from John Mueller, and this was said as recently as just 2019, they believe in their finite wisdom that a good link is someone who comes across your website, thinks it's a fantastic resource, and recommends it to another person with a link, end quote. So basically, passive link building is what they're looking for. Now, is that possible in the world we live in? Because that would require us to pretend that search engines don't exist, or that, as you heard Darson and Andrew talk about, that links and link building are not as powerful as they really are. And we can't pretend sitting here today talking to you that links do not move the needle on the average website. That's not been our experience at all, especially it's never been my experience. I know Arson does a lot of link building. So what does that leave you if Google is saying, well, the only good link is the one that you didn't ask for? Well, it leaves you with a quandary. Do you want to just put up great content, maybe promote it a little bit at your end and hope to hell that someone stumbles across it and links to it naturally? Or do you want to be a little bit more aggressive, so to speak, and work with people who might be able to facilitate a wider reach on your content, or hire a professional who could go out and find opportunities for you to position this content more effectively, or maybe just hire someone who can go out and promote that content more effectively than you? And that's where everyone runs foul of Google, is that I can't tell you how many of the biggest bloggers have been buying links or working with professionals for years to promote their content or to be positioned in the right places to get that content the promotion and the eyeballs it needs. It happens. It happens in every niche. There's nothing bad about that. It's just I want you to understand that with good link building, sometimes having the best content is definitely not enough. And I know we're going to get into that today, but in Google's eyes, they're definitely not against link building, but they're literally against every other kind of link building that would involve more than some kind of an overt reaction on your part to the link itself.
So then, Andrew, can you kind of clarify what a quality link is, and if it's more important, especially in eyes of Google as well as users, if the quantity of links is more important than the quality of a link?
Yes, absolutely they are. So, I mean, I think it's helpful to think back to the 90s when Google was founded. The reason Google became so good at search results was because of links. They were the ones who really understood how to analyze links and give them weight and importance and quantify them, not just look at quantify the quality, I guess. So quality is so important and relevancy is so important. You know, if I have a food blog and I link to, I don't know, a bunch of dancing clowns on my potato soup recipe, that's not terribly relevant, right? So basically I just described Arson's blog, I think. You really, like, one really good quality link is worth so much more than 10 mediocre links. I'm making that number up. But relevancy is key. And then Google's also looking at the quality of the site that's doing the linking. If you have, Yahoo News homepage, if you get on a link on or the CNN homepage or something like that, that has so much more authority because it's such a quality site, politics notwithstanding, and Google's going to give that link a lot more importance. Whereas if it's a link buried in the bottom of some other website that's not considered important, it might be relevant, but it won't have the same value. So yes, quantity does matter because you want more links are better in general, but only if they're good links. And I want to paste in an article from John Mueller at Google, where he basically just says the total number of backlinks. does not matter. So really, really, really focus on relevancy and quality from quality sites. Can't stress that enough.
Got it. And you mentioned quality of sites, Andrew. Arsen, when looking at the quality of a link, a lot of times tools will use things like domain authority or page authority to rate how valuable that link is, as in how valuable the website the link is coming from. Are those good metrics to go by? Domain authority, page authority?
So the short answer is no. Even though it's widely used, the short answer is no. We focus on relevancy. I can care less if a website that we are doing outreach to has domain authority of like 45, and another website that we're doing outreach to has domain authority of like 15. But the one that's 15 is so much more relevant to the topic that I'm covering. I will go after relevancy before domain authority. Domain authority and page authority, and then there's like a few other ones. They are all metrics that were created by companies like Moz or SEMrush or SEMrush or Ahrefs. There's lots of them, and that number typically depends on whatever the internal algorithm they build to evaluate those links and the amount of links that they have in their database, right? So because they crawl through the web and they pick up, they crawl similarly to Google and pick up links from around the web. So the bigger the database, the more precise the data is. But those metrics and those algorithms can be easily gamed. We've experimented with this, and we can artificially inflate the domain authority of any website, and that does not, a higher DA does not necessarily translate into a website's ability to rank. So I can have a site that has a really decent DA, but if you look at the keywords that it's ranking, it's not going to be anything decent. So relevancy trumps authority at any given point. I say this very frequently on my calls, my consultation calls with potential clients, that I'd rather have, like I said, a link that's relevant from a lower authority website or that perceived authority website than like from a DA 45 transmission repair shop in Fresno, which does not make sense if it's linking to my food blog, right? So definitely don't focus on DA. A lot of times that metric is used when you are out there and negotiating and talking to link developers, or you'll see a lot of sites say, oh, we sell links that are DA 30 and up and all of that. The higher the DA does not really, we haven't seen higher DA mean that we're going to get better rankings.
I would just add to that very quickly, and I know we've mentioned this previously on these calls, but this is a very popular question that we get from attendees and our clients. You should be using metrics like domain authority and trust rank and trust relevancy and domain rank and all these other invented metrics that are out there for novelty and comparison purposes only. They're a good way for you to compare links between you and competitors, or could be a good way for you to compare to kind of how you're ranking or stack up with other sites, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. We get questions all the time about, oh my God, I really need to build up my domain rank. I'm only 12 or I'm only a 22 or something like that. And hey, it'll come. It comes as you naturally accumulate links and authority on your end by publishing more content, being active online and the like. It's not going to magically result in a huge shift. I've seen domain 12 sites rank on the first page of Google for keywords as high as 15 to 25,000 sessions a month, no problem. And it's because bottom line, they had the best content. So don't think that that's necessarily a must-have. I mean, clearly the stronger your site, the better, but it's not ever a deal breaker in many cases.
Okay, that makes sense. So Andrew, we've gone into the back end of what link building is, what links are, but now let's get into the structural aspect of putting links on post. Is there such a thing as having too many links on a blog post or a recipe post?
I'd say yes. I'm going to fall back to something you guys hear me say on every single one of these webinars. Think of your users, right? If you flood a blog post with tons of links, then it gets in the way of you providing your valuable content on that page, then it's probably too many. I mean, if the links are useful to your visitors, like say you're doing a recipe roundup and there's like 50 best potato soup recipes, as long as they don't all link to Arson's food blog, then you're probably good. Because if providing 50 different potato soup recipes and links to all those sites has value for the people who are going to be reading that page, then that's great. You also want to consider relevancy. If it's 50 random recipes, that might not have the same oomph, right? Google's going to see that because it's not all relevant. So I think, it's kind of like our answer to how long should a blog post be, enough to serve your reader and give them useful help and information.
Again, always circling back to the user, and that makes sense. So thinking about the user, Casey, is there a specific strategy of how many links should be laid out on a post? From a user perspective, is it more helpful to have, if you're going to have links at the top of a post, in the middle of the post, throughout the post, how should you formulate that when you're actually writing the post?
That's a good question. And again, I know this is something that's very relevant to everyone on the call, but also something that I know many of you have asked us privately about. This is interesting. So per Google, where they position links on a page is irrelevant to Google. This is directly from Google. However, I think everyone on this call would tell you that doesn't really jive with what we've seen in practice or with patents that Google has published over the years. There seems to be some preference with regards to where the links are placed on the page. For example, in-content links tend to be treated more positively than modular links, which are links that you see in sidebars or on footers or even on headers. Google tends to provide a little bit more emphasis, so to speak, when we're linking internally in content. But I think bottom line, all links do count. Google has just publicly said, links and footers, links and sidebars don't count as much as the in-content link specifically. I tend to recommend that when we're putting links together that we lay them out naturally from top to bottom. We tend to see that links tend to be counted more when they're higher in the content. They're stronger signals to Google than lower links on the page. I did see some advice recently that you should avoid links in like the first 100 words of the content. I don't believe in that at all. I think that is some crazy recommendation from some source out there. I've seen it pop up on the forums quite a bit recently. I don't agree with that at all. You link internally or you link externally when it makes sense to your users. If you have related links that makes sense to users and it fits within the content at that time, regardless of whether it's at the top of the page or the bottom, we link accordingly. I hear some advice that, well, Casey, I don't like to put links higher on my page because maybe the user will go off to another recipe before they finish the existing recipe I'm on. Well, there's some validity to that, but I also think that it's extremely misplaced. If you can link naturally to a sauce or something else that's going to add contextual relevancy to the user as they're continuing down your page, I would do it every time. If I'm making this prime rib and I have an accompanying au jus, I'm going to mention that I have the accompanying au jus right there at the top of the post. Usually in many cases, I might link to it twice in the post. There used to be some debate whether or not Google would count a link that we've linked to multiple times in a post. Recently, John Mueller had a tweet where he said, we just don't care. We're going to count all the links. Some links might be more valuable than other. Even Google, he really said it was so funny. We can't even tell you which links on the page we're really going to count. Okay, so algorithmically, I really want you to start thinking about, I want to put this post together in a way that makes sense to the users. I want to link internally when it makes sense. I want to link from the top to the bottom of the post. I want to link in my recipe card if it makes sense. So if I have under my notes section, if I'm going to have something that's accompanying this, like again, the au jus is a great example. I'll link to the au jus in my recipe card from the notes section. It's not a problem. If you have equipment that you want to put in your recipe card that links out externally, and maybe it's an Amazon link, totally fine. Personal preference, and because I see this so many times, I do not necessarily recommend those big Amazon product links in cards. And I know they're easy to add for cards like Tasty and Create. I think they look terrible. I think they take up too much space. I think that they're slow. I would rather, if you're going to use Amazon links in a recipe card, stick with the straight links. Use an equipment section, link 4 or 5 times that way. That's fine. I think the bottom line when we're talking about specific strategy on how links should be laid out is we just want to ensure that all pages on the site can be reached from a link that is on a findable page. So this brings us again to the topic of orphan content. I know many of you have heard us talk about orphan content. It's why I recommend that we upgrade to Yoast Premium whenever we can, or we use the orphaned page finder that is within SEMrush, which tells us which pages on our site lack links from any other pages, because we want to make sure that everything is as linked as we can. You know, we want to make sure that all links are close to each other when we can, but with regards to how you should lay out your links, top to bottom, if you want to have a related link section above your recipe card, great, but I would never have just that and not have in content links, because in content links tend to be viewed as a little bit more conceptually and contextually accurate and relevant to Google. So
Right.
link naturally, and I think Arsen has a little bit of feedback on this.
So I just wanted to chime in because you're essentially explaining the reasonable surfer model, right? Which is something that Google put together, and that's a way for Google to understand which links should be weighted over other links or more heavily, right? So that model basically says that reasonably, a user is more likely to click on links that are within the body of the content than links that are in the footer or in the sidebar, right? So if you want to prioritize internal linking, this is a smart kind of an approach to it. And also, internal linking greatly improves with breadcrumbs. If you don't have breadcrumbs, get them in there.
Yeah, that's a very top of the post. You know, we want to have, that's why I recommend that we turn breadcrumbs on always as a default. I still see a lot of users not doing that. And just to kind of reiterate this specifically, and I know we talked about links on a page previously, I would always be very weary of anyone that says you need to have this many internal links or you need to have this many external links on a page, because that's not how it works. Okay, I know a lot of you have taken courses out there and they tell you, oh, you should have this many internal links, or you should make sure that you have one authoritative link out on your site. We're going to talk a little bit about that later in some of these questions, but I just think that kind of stuff is very rigid. It's nonsensical. Google's never said any of that. We link when it makes sense to our users. We link internally when we can do so to related content. If you have related recipes, I'm all for that. I tend to always recommend that we have all the linking done above the recipe card whenever possible. There's no reason to include stuff like that below the recipe card. People don't see it. That's just a barrier between the end of the recipe card and your comments. Don't need to do that. Link naturally from top to bottom. Understand that Google tends to emphasize links on the top of the page, and that first 100 to 200 words specifically on the page, very important. So don't be afraid to put some links in there. That'll help you.
Andrew, with internal linking, so we just talked about how to structure the links on the actual blog post, but say some of those links in that blog post are internal links, which is linking to other pages on your site in that post. Are there any specific steps to follow or things to make sure that you don't do when it comes to linking to other pages on your site?
Yes, and actually, I don't even have to say it depends this time, which I'm so excited. Yeah, so there are some technical things you should absolutely make sure you're doing with your internal links. The first one and the most important is do not tag it as no follow. So when you add a link, you can make it rel equals no follow if you want, for specific reasons. You do not want to do that in your internal links, because that's telling Google, hey, don't give this link any weight. So you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if you do that. So make sure you're not accidentally tagging your links as no follow. You want to also then make sure the link is relevant. So if you're writing your blog post about, oh, I need to pick up a different food, a Guinness stew, which I think is on the stove right now. You don't want to be linking to things that are totally random and unrelated to that. Like if you then link to gluten-free chocolate chip cookies or something, like you're also kind of weakening that bond. So you want to make sure your links have meaning to your visitors. And then while you do that, use good anchor text. So instead of saying, for more recipes, click here, and making click here the relevant text, say, for, if you have a name of a dessert, you want the name of the dessert to be the link. Google still gives the actual text that's linked the most weight. Text around it also has a lot of weight. Like Google understands context now way more than it did in like 2002, but it's still very relevant. Bonus tip, that's also really important for accessibility. If you use click here a lot and someone's using a screen reader, they are not going to have the context of what they're getting to when they click on it. So it's a win-win. And it also is more readable. So break yourself out of the habit of saying click here or get this now or click this link. Anything generic. It's kind of like using vague pronouns when you do that. You want to make sure you're using good anchor text. Another thing, this is a usability thing. Don't open links, internal links in new tabs or new windows. It's nothing more annoying that you click on a link and it opens to a new tab and suddenly you found like there are 10 tabs open on the same site. It makes it really hard to navigate the site, and it also breaks the back button. So when you open a new tab, if somebody's in a new tab, they can't click back to get where they were. The back button is still the most used button or link on the web. So don't break that functionality for people. And then the other part is just to think about the site-wide links. I know we were talking about how Google doesn't give them as much weight because it knows they're site-wide links, but they're still very strong signals, right? If you have featured posts in your sidebar on every page in your site, that's saying to Google, hey, this content is important on my site. This is my best content. So you want to be methodical about that. And also there's a potential gotcha if you're doing a site redesign. We've seen a lot of people, they change their links site-wide because they change their footer links or they change their menu at the same time. And then their traffic tanks and they don't know why. And they blame the theme change when really it may not have been the theme. It may have been that you just changed thousands of ranking signals or thousands of clues to Google. You just like totally wiped that out in one fell swoop. And you can also improve your signals with that change too. So it can go both ways, but that's something to watch for. But yeah, if I had to pick one thing though, make sure you do not tag them no follow. That's the most important.
Perfect. And Arsen, what about external links? Should you have an external link on every post, especially if you have internal links on the post? Do you have to have an external link?
Right. So I think Andrew covered that earlier. You should definitely link out if it makes sense. It should not be like a part of your checklist saying that every one of my recipes needs to have X amount of external links, internal links, and whatever have you. If it makes sense to link out externally, if you need to provide a reader on more information about the topic that you're covering, absolutely link out. Link to relevant sources. Google talks about that all the time. Internal links are also very important. They have to make sense. If it makes sense, do internal link. You do so. Anchor text. So there is something to be said about anchor text when it comes to internal linking, and you want to make sure that you are, and just like Andrew said, you are being very descriptive with the anchor text. And I see this frequently, anchor text should not be super long. You should not hyperlink an entire sentence. I see this in a lot of food blogs. I see hyperlinks of entire sentences. I've seen headings hyperlinked internally. Your headings.
Yeah, and just to interject on that, I know that Matthew Woodward in the UK and several others have done studies on that. If you have like a 16-word hyperlink, Google tends to not necessarily process all that.
It'll just skip over it.
Strange. You'll just skip over it. So don't think that you need to have these really long sentences and others that are hyperlinked. There's no value there for users or Google.
Right, especially, and again, because Google still uses the co-citation or the content that surrounds the link to understand the contextuality of the link. So to answer your question, no, it's not required, it's not necessary, but you should do it to provide a better user experience. Better user experience translates into better rankings.
Gotcha. So those who are a little bit nervous doing external links because technically the user can leave the site shouldn't necessarily be afraid of that as long as it makes sense with the content and the actual experience.
Right. So, I mean, think about it this way. If I'm coming to Andrew's site to read about his Guinness potato soup, right? And he has a link out to, I don't know, where to buy a Guinness glass. My initial intent is for that recipe, right? So I might click and open in a new tab to look at it later. But if my primary intent is to look at this recipe, I'm not going to exit Andrew's page. I'm going to come there and I'm going to engage with the recipe.
Okay, that makes sense. Casey, since we're on the subject of anchor text, what does Google say about anchor text and its necessity?
Unmute myself here. We've kind of covered it, and I went ahead and pasted over several comments about anchor text specifically in the chat, so you want to take a look at that. I've also linked over links to the SEO starter guide from Google and other issues which go into detail about how Google talks about anchor text. And basically what John Mueller says specifically is that the really strong piece of contextual analysis for them on a link comes from the anchor text of the link. So I'm trying to tell someone where I'm going. If I have a meatloaf recipe and I'm linking to my meatloaf topping, or maybe I have another recipe for a meatloaf glaze, I would make sure that I link meatloaf glaze, or I would link something that's very descriptive for the user so they know where they're going specifically. And I've mentioned this and it's already been acknowledged here in the chat. We do not want to use what's called naked anchor text, things like click here, read more, this recipe, this person says, or something like that. We tend to link a resource specifically. So if we state a fact, we kind of link some of the other facts, or we link to something like WebMD says this, and we would link to WebMD, or we would link to what WebMD has said specifically as an example. We want to make sure that we're looking at understanding that the better your anchor text is, the easier it is for users in Google to navigate your site and understand the relevancy of that link. And that's what we want to do. So we want to be descriptive with the anchor text, but just to reinforce what Arsen and I were speaking about earlier, don't write a novel here. Don't have 12, 16 words of anchor text there. Have something that's easy for the user to understand. Link to the recipe by name whenever you can. Link to someone you're quoting by name externally if you want to link externally when it makes sense to the user. Link a resource, or link or highlight some of the points in this resource you're trying to link to. I do want to preface one thing here, which is that I have been seeing a lot of questions from bloggers recently about superfluous links on a page, and I'm not sure when we're going to get to that, so I want to cover it now because it's kind of related to anchor text. I had someone mention in a podcast I was doing a couple days ago that it was a bigger blogger telling everyone within their group, you should always link to the recipe itself within the recipe. And I thought that was strange because Google specifically says that the anchor text on a page you should avoid creating unnecessary links that don't help with the user's navigation of the site. So if you're just being told to link to a recipe within the post, I don't really see any value in that. I don't really see linking on a post that takes me directly to the post that I'm on. Doesn't really have any value. And I'm sure that Andrew could chime in on accessibility reasons for that. But I also see that with images. We don't want to link images as well. I know a lot of people, when they insert images, sometimes they'll mistakenly forget to remove a link to a media file, or they'll mistakenly forget to remove the link to the post itself. And then you have these clickable links on a post that all go to the same post itself. You have to think usability. There's no usability for the user on there. And it will also slightly waste your internal crawl budget or your link juice. Everyone say link juice because Arsen loves that term. He gets giddy about it every time everyone says link juice. Actually, I believe that a puppy dies every time someone says link juice. So we're going to be very careful about that.
I've got a glass of link juice right here.
Link juice right there. Drink up. So understand that if it doesn't make sense, it probably is not necessary. So don't believe that you need to include a link to the post within the post, and don't believe that you need to link all of your images.
Hey, Casey, Skylar just mentioned something interesting in the chat. He's thinking that sometimes people may link to the post because of so much content theft. So that way, if the post is just completely scraped and copied over, there's a link back. What do you think about that?
Well, we have absolute links mostly anyway in your content. So if someone was trying to scrape the whole content, they're going to scrape all the internal links to your own content in the process. So to me, I think that I get that that's a valid, I guess you could use that as some kind of a reasoning, but to me, I don't think it's necessary. Just like linking to the images. If we want to, there's plenty of other internal links that you could use there. I would prefer just to have a copyright notice instead and whatever. I don't think me linking, someone copying a post and possibly linking over a link to that is going to provide you much value or protection from spammers. If they're really motivated, they'll just remove it.
Yeah, they could edit that on the fly pretty easily too.
Yeah.
Then you don't always want links from scraper sites.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, hey, we want links from scrapers. That's a natural link profile. It'd be very unnatural for me to have a post, a site that didn't have some scraper links. It's like, yeah, it's like people who say, hey, you know, you got to provide links to the most important pages on your site, like your About Me page and other pages. No, you don't. If you started to
Right.
build in links to those pages, you would create a natural link profile, which would allow you to stand out for all the wrong reasons. But I've seen that recommendation as well online, which is pretty laughable.
Person let's get a little bit more technical with this, or dive even more technical with this. Can you explain what disavowing a link is and if toxic links should be disavowed?
Okay, so toxic is a bad word to use.
Like link juice.
Yes, we should stop it. Okay, so you should not be disavowing links, and I think we've mentioned disavow file like pretty much in every single episode. Do not do anything with the disavow file unless you 100% know that you need to disavow links. It's a double-edged sword. If you don't do it properly, you are more likely to harm your website than to do any good to it. Google is really good at yes, we need to tell SEMrush to stop telling people their links are toxic. So Google is really good at at understanding when the link is crap, right? Google is doing a really good job, but we can tell that Google is doing a good job because we haven't seen a wave of link penalties come around in a while. B, Google, when Google finds links that are toxic or just like useless or trash links, it just ignores them, right? Now, if you got a manual penalty from Google, right, in your Search Console says we have applied a manual action against your page, a specific page, or a bunch of pages on your website due to link schemes or whatever, then you need to do your work. You need to identify those crappy links. You need to do outreach to those places, try to get them removed. If you can't get them removed, that's when you use the disavow file. That's when you go in and you use the disavow file and you submit a reconsideration request. Or if you've been hit with a quote unquote filter during an algorithm update that Google runs, and you notice that you have lost traffic and positions and rankings, and you've done all the other work, you've checked everything, you've done an audit, you've done forensic analysis, you've checked which pages were affected, and you've quadruple checked everything, and things are still and things are looking good page level wise, then take a look at the backlinks pointing to that page, and you can use all kinds of tools to take a look at that. And if you see that there was an influx of links and they're all coming from like, you know, I don't know, Russian Viagra sites, whatever, then you can go in and try to use a disavow file. And again, you have to, because you can disavow a specific page or you can disavow an entire domain. So you definitely want to either work with someone who knows what they're doing, just to make sure that you don't cause more harm than good. And that's my story.
And it's a beautiful story. Taking the story a step back, what does disavowing a link mean? Tammy's asking inside the chat.
So disavowing, basically telling, a good question. Disavowing is essentially telling Google, do not use this link as a part of your evaluation of my website.
Okay. And Casey, can linking to other sites that aren't necessarily in your niche, say you're a keto blogger and you link to a vegan pastry blogger, can that hurt you since it's not within your niche?
No, honestly, I'm not even going to say it depends. I mean, unless you are really going out to link to these really horrible sites that have nothing to do with your content and that are provide no real value, then sure. But even Google has said, John Mueller recently said that they want you to link out when it makes sense to users. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter where you link if it makes sense to users. So if you're auditing your backlink profile just because something is off niche, that's a waste of your time. And it's not something I or anyone else would really recommend. You cutting away some links from a woodworking site, even though you're a recipe site, or from another site just because it's not naturally related, is not going to provide some magical salve for your site. Everyone has unrelated links. I think what would be unnatural would be for you to go into your site and basically eliminate everything that is not directly in your niche, because that's not how the internet works. People link when it makes sense to them. People link when they find something of interest. That's always what we want to do. And there's this belief as well that you can link out too much from a page and it can dilute page rank or lower the changes of that page rank on the site. But recently, John Mueller had a great tweet on this where he says pages that have tons of link, others have few, they all rank in search. It's easy to test. You find 5,000 random URLs to link to and see what happens when the page you're linking from. Rain dances have a stronger impact than linking to unrelated sites, end quote. So that's something to be aware of, is that there isn't really an issue with random or unrelated links being necessarily bad. Now, if you were to go out and buy links and someone was like, I'm going to build links into your site and they're going to be awesome, but oh, by the way, none of them are going to be niche related, I would say that you're probably wasting your money, or you're going to have very limited, if any, effect for those links. Niche related links, of course, will help you, but I would say that, if you occasionally get a link from something that's not related, but it brings in traffic, that's always the most important thing about links. Links that bring in traffic are always the most valuable of links. It doesn't matter if they're follow or no follow, off topic or on topic. Links that get clicked, links that generate positive metrics are always the most valuable links. But I would say that I would also add here that linking out to authoritative sites isn't really going to help you either. That's something that we as SEOs have really tried to confirm over the last several years. Google hasn't mentioned anything about linking out since they had an original statement in 2008. That was a lifetime ago. Gosh, what was the world like in 2008? Yeah. Right? Oh my goodness, that was crazy. I was about half the size I am now. And I think that I wasn't, my kids were actually still watching, gosh, what was it? Paw Patrol? Still then. I don't know if it was on then, but not. But one of the things to think about, we link out when it makes sense to users, not because some course told us, or, hey, don't forget to include an authoritative link here and there. So just understand that linking out to sites works both ways. We want to link out when it makes sense to our users, but as a user ourselves, we want to link out as well when we find something of interest. It's okay. We've audited sites and we've seen links go everywhere. It's okay. It's not going to hurt you, and there's not some magical formula that you need to lose too much sleep over.
Okay. And Andrew, speaking of getting traffic from links, one strategy was doing roundup posts. Would you say that roundup posts for publishers still help? And if so, what's the best way to approach roundup posts?
Yes, I think so, as long as they provide value for your readers. Right? Yeah. I think you guys are going to have to do a shot every time I say that. So and Casey Narson, you might want to jump in too. One of the things you can do is, like, WP Recipe Maker has a roundup feature now. So it provides structure to Google to say, hey, I'm giving a roundup, right? You can do roundups of your own posts as well. But if you're doing a roundup of like 20 great babka recipes, then maybe 3 of those are yours, but 17 are other people's. And if they're high quality and there's some interesting reason to link to those, I think that's good. Yeah.
Right. So, all like, so we'll talk about different strategies, I guess, today. But all of these types of link building techniques are okay, as long as you don't overdo it, and as long as they're not the only thing that you're doing. So there's certain things that we internally at Top Hat Rank call red flags, right? So red flags in your link building in your link profile is oversaturation of incoming anchor text. So links pointing to your site, to your page, that have the same anchor text, and oversaturating using the same or using the exact match anchor text to the keyword that you're trying to rank, right? So you want to be very mindful of that. The second thing that you want to be mindful of is the same link over and over. That's the same type of link. That's a red flag, because that doesn't happen naturally, right? If you look at sites that have a very strong organic footprint, you're going to see all kinds of sites linking back to them. There's going to be a diversity of stuff. So if you're overdoing it and you're a newer blog and you're overdoing it with these roundups, you're not helping yourself at all. Now, you're not going to necessarily get yourself in trouble. You're just not going to see too much result from it. And then, you have to do things like, diversify them and all of that. So yeah, you can do all of these things, just don't overdo it. Casey.
Hey, no comment.
Fair, fully covered.
Fully covered. You're good. Go.
And Arsen, you mentioned talking about strategies. Can you share some of those link building strategies? Let's get to the nitty gritty of what everyone really wants to know. How
Right.
to properly build great links.
Right. So this is one of those like teach to fish, give a fish kind of scenarios, or buy a fish. Okay. So right. So there's a few things that you can do, and it all revolves around like being really creative and thinking outside the box. And I can't tell you all of the tactics that we use inside of Top Hat Rank, but there's a few things that I've seen, a few things that we've done ourselves that have worked very well. So the first thing you have to do is you have to take a look at, like, really understand what your assets are, right? Do you have a strong social presence, or do you have like a really powerful blog, right? Or both. An example, if you have a strong social presence, is you can do something called ego baiting. Ego baiting is where you offer somebody to promote them as an author, or as a nutritionist, or a motivational coach, or whatever have you, right? And if you have a strong social presence, you can use like Instagram to find somebody who talks, somebody who has a profile and has a website, has a good following, but they're not like really big yet. And maybe they are like somebody who's like a health coach, or somebody who helps you with like adjusting your life for healthy or better living, and they have something they write, here's your recipe or meal plan for healthy living for this week, right? So you can do two things with that situation. You can say, hey, I noticed that you posted about this on Instagram. It's not getting too much traction. You can build a relationship with that person and say, what I'd like to do is I'd like to cross promote you. I'd like to share your content on my page, and in exchange, I'd like for you to do an interview with me on your website, right? What this does is it helps them. It gets a link to you from them, and it's not a reciprocal link. You're not linking out to them and they're linking back to you. So you're getting a really good quality link. In that same tone, you can do a reverse of that. So if you don't have social presence, but you're really good at photography, at food photography, right? You can take somebody else's like meal plan and you can create recipes around it, right? And then do the photography, and then reach out to them and say, hey, I really enjoyed your post. I created recipes around your meal plan and took really awesome pictures. Would love for you to reference them, right? So there's all kinds of tactics that you can apply to get things done. We've done things like when we worked with, we still do, but when we worked with financial institutions, we've gone as far as looking at scholarly articles on Google, and these are just like long, boring studies that were done about a specific topic, and usually are published on like a .edu domain. And what we would do is we would read through them and we would create an infographic. We would create an asset around it. And then we would reach out, we would publish the infographic on our client's website with an embed code. An embed code is something that you copy and paste onto your site, which shows the image and provides a link pointing back to you. And what we would do is we would create this infographic, and then we would reach out to the author of that study, and we say, hey, really enjoyed reading your study. Here is a infographic that we created to help people better understand the overall focus of what you're talking about, or your findings of the study, so that they don't have to like read through the entire 80-page write-up that you did. And most of the time it's a response, oh, awesome, thank you so much, this is great. They take the embed code, they put it in the study, and now our client has a link pointing back to them. So it's all about getting creative. It's all about diversifying. You can do things locally. If you can donate money to local charities, and then you can look for sites or charities or foundations that are local to you, or even national, that have a page on their website where they talk about sponsors and link out to them. We're grateful to these people. Thank you so much. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. You can also do your own outreach, but that's a beast. You really have to know what you're doing. It will eat up a lot of your time. Building relationships creating groups to help people out. Getting creative is what's going to give you the best links.
And I think it's definitely important to clarify with your infographic example. There was a mention in the chat about getting those types of emails all the time, but where the difference is with that, you're offering and providing more valuable content versus another email of saying, hey, I have a valuable blog.
Right. And I wouldn't want you to email them either, right? You make that relationship on social. I do this all the time. I will reach out to someone and say, hey, really enjoying your profile. Check me out. I'm a normal human being. I'm not some like marketer out of call center trying to build links, right? This is what I'm doing.
Even though he is.
I am, yeah. So, I really enjoy what you're doing. I love your content. I've created this asset to help you, right? Would you mind sharing it? But you don't want to come in with a pitch right away, right? Like their posts, engage with them, and don't do any of that like robotic, like 6 of their posts and 6 of their pictures in a row so they notice you. Actually, like reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I do. This is who I am. I am authority, or I have this amazing Instagram account, or I have a very powerful blog with the email list. Here are my assets. Here's what I want from you. Let's help each other out. As long as you're not creating an environment where it's like a link for link,
yeah,
then you're good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you share some examples of great content with food, lifestyle, and DIY bloggers that have pulled in links to maybe help give some more strategy ideas?
I can, and I have just pasted over several of those examples in the chat for you guys to make a note of. Please click over those and visit those today when you get a chance. I pasted some examples from various niches here. The first one that I want you to see is from Sarah at Dinner at the Zoo, which is really cool. I think it's actually, yeah, Dinner at the Zoo. She's a former audit client. She's done very well with roundups. This is an older roundup that she's done. It's on meal prep recipes. It continues to generate thousands of clicks to her site every month. It's great. She's got 120 linking root domains to that, 200 plus inbound links. The post is #1 in Google for meal prep recipes, and she ranks for 2,200 keywords. Okay, so when we're talking about putting these recipes together, it's never anything dramatic. It's just that she has leveraged a resource very effectively. It's linked internally well. It's picked up extremely good external links and linking root domains. Also want you to think about things like cooking conversion charts. I know that they're probably played out right now, but the ones that have done well have been around for a while. This is Becky over at the Cookie Rookie, also again, former client, current client. She has 160 plus linking root domains, 200 inbound links. She ranks for 1,600 keywords for this. It's very, very well put together. Other things like how-to posts, how to put together a charcuterie board. I love that. Say that 15 times fast. You're good times.
Charcuterie.
Yeah, charcuterie board. And I like my charcuterie boards heavy on the cheese and the meat. Put those vegetables aside. We don't need any of that stuff. That's crazy talk. But this is a great post for her. It ranks for 1,400 keywords. It's one of their top traditional posts, 120 linking root domains. Very well put together. So take a look at the structure of these. Take a look at how these are put together. Recently, I was very fortunate to have a full audit with Vina Asimov, who is one of the top pastry chefs in the world. I mean, seriously, the woman has forgotten more about sugar
than I do
sugar in my life. I mean, she had an audit with me. She's a sponge. She lives in Israel right now. She signed up with Arson. She's doing some concentrated link building with him. She has some great content, and one of them is this cake pricing guide, which I didn't even think about. But as a baker, if you're trying to sell cakes, it's perfect. It's a fantastic resource on how you price your cakes. And it's an exhaustive resource. It's done very well pulling in links and linking root domains. It ranks for about 1,100 keywords. Fantastic. And then AmazingRibs.com, which is a longtime client I've consulted for. This is a Meathead, probably the top grilling site in the world. Amazing Ribs ranks for tens of thousands of meat specific queries. It's crazy with their content. This one here, everything you'd ever want to know about pork. So it's a personal favorite of mine. I actually check it every day for pork cuts. It's good recipes there. 180 plus linking root domains, 1,000 plus followed inbound links from the community table, links from other big global media sites. Ranks for 1,100 keywords. It's fantastic. And for those of you on the call who have health or medical content, check out this resource that I pasted over here from Abby's Kitchen. Abby is a well-known registered dietitian based in Toronto. She has great content, and she's always very good at putting together detailed resources and then linking out correctly to support all health claims. And how she does that is something we discussed today on the call. I want you to take a look at that example. I've pasted over her resource on how to stop stomach cramps, which is like most of the content on her site. It's well linked. It ranks for 1,000+ keywords, and it's very well put together in that she does in-content citations as necessary to the National Institute of Health researches and all this other stuff. She links out when it makes sense to the National Institutes of Health for citations on all of her content. And that's what you have to do. It doesn't matter if you have experience. We want to link out and support anything that is a health or medical claim at all, because that falls under the your money or your life consideration when we talk about the concepts of EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and of course, most importantly, trustworthiness. We want to make sure that all the content that we publish that could have a positive or negative effect on our life or money is fully supported, and Abby does that extremely well. So check those out, and hopefully that will give you kind of a good overview of the content that on its own, with no real promotion from the audience, has been well received and continues to pull in links on a regular basis.
Perfect. And Casey, on one of the links, the A Baker, the rest of the URL got cut off. So if you don't mind pasting that in.
Oh, the how-to link. Let's see that real quick.
We're just about out of time. We have one more question, and then we're going to do a couple Q&A questions. You guys have answered 31 questions already in Q&A, which is absolutely insane and amazing. So attendees, if you haven't gotten your question into Q&A, get it on over there. We're going to open that up in just a second. Andrew, last question. You had success building links for your own food blog. Can you kind of share what your strategy was for building links for your food blog?
Yeah, so I started my own food blog, Eating Rules, in 2010. So I'm a dinosaur in the food blogging space now. And I thought I was late to the party then, which is kind of funny. About 6 months into starting my blog, I decided to lead a challenge that I called October Unprocessed, where I tried to get as many people as possible to eat no processed food whatsoever for the entire month. And I had done it with 2 friends before I started my blog the year before, and I'm like, I'm going to do this in my blog. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I happened to be at the IFBC conference in Seattle, back when we could actually do conferences in person. Side note, IFBC is doing a conference tomorrow virtually, so you guys should check that out. So anyway, I'm at the IFBC conference. I meet all the other food bloggers. And so I talked to people about doing this together as a community. And what I ended up doing was leading this 30-day challenge on my site. And I asked other publishers to write guest posts with recipes that I'd publish on my site, all about unprocessed food. So it was, this was all 2010, so it's a little different now, right? But what I ended up doing was getting 30 different articles or blog posts and recipes that I posted on my site. And I asked people to do teaser posts on theirs to direct their audience to mine. I also added a graphic for all of them. If they were a contributor, I made a little logo that they can put on their site, and a lot of people put that on their sidebar. By the end of the year, I had like 400 people who had signed the pledge to do it, but it also got a lot of traction on Twitter, and the LA Times food blog picked it up. So Renee did a blog post on that, and then the New York Times food blog picked it up. So not only did I get links from other bloggers, but I got links from major media. So that put my blog on the map. It's harder to do that now. I totally get that. But I wanted to tell this story because you have to think creatively. You have to do something that comes from a genuine place and that will excite and interest other people. So if you're creating great content, that counts, right? If you're creating one of these big roundup things, that's a huge, valuable resource, then you're going to naturally get links. But if there's any way you can build momentum and get other people involved, that's really helpful as well. So if you approach it from I should mention, I did not set out to build links. Like, I was just so excited about this project that I just wanted to do it, and I kind of lucked into it. But in retrospect, it worked so well because it was sincere. So for all of you guys thinking about building backlinks, I really hope you'll come from a place of genuine growth and genuine excitement, and really providing value to your readers and to the rest of this community. And when that happens, it's going to circle back on you. So don't approach it from how can I build links, because that's just going to be really exhausting. So that's my spiel on that.
Perfect. And a perfect way to end things out. We have most all of the questions in Q&A have been answered. Again, you guys are awesome, but we'll take this last question and then we will wrap things up. From Alana, straight text links versus linked images. What are your thoughts? Does the link image need an accompanying text link? Open that up to anybody.
Yeah, I am actually answering that right now. So I want to go ahead and have you guys answer that so we can see if your answer matches mine, which Elena is going to receive right now.
You don't need an accompanying text link with your image link. It's perfectly fine. If it makes sense to link an image, you can also use, I think on the image, it's an alt, right?
So I'm typing in, don't listen to arson. Okay, right there.
Well, you can also add a title to the image link also. So you can do title and you can do an alt.
So I'm going to jump in because this has big accessibility considerations. So if you've got an image that does not have a link right next to it, like if there's a text link next to it and a link and they both link to the same place, that has different accessibility implications than just an image with a link. Your alt text you should have alt text on every image inside a post. And that should describe the purpose of the image. So if it's a link, you might want to explain what the link is going to. If it's an informational image, like a picture of a finished dish, you want to describe the finished dish. There's lots of stuff about accessibility with that. And I think that's a huge consideration. And I'm going to say accessibility trumps SEO in this case. Like you don't want to try to game the system on SEO and shoot yourself in the foot with accessibility.
Yeah, and again, I would just say that think about your sidebar. Like I know a lot of bloggers have a sidebar and they'll put links on it and I'm all for that. But sometimes they'll just have images there. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I can't really tell from the image what that dish is. So that's annoying. So I would always have you, if you're going to be putting links on your sidebar specifically, or even links on your footer, some kind of a related links widget, have both the image and the link showing what this is. That's just, I think, good for accessibility. I think it's good for general UX. I think it's better overall, but that's really the only consideration I have is I tend to, with image links are treated a little bit different from Google. An image link by itself, honestly, probably not as powerful as the contextual surrounding information is, and the contextual surrounding information would be more brought to home and bear if there's actually a linked hyperlink as well.
And on that note, we have run out of time. In fact, we ran over. So thank you everyone who stuck with us. Thank you, panelists, for answering all of the information about links. Just a couple of notes, both Casey and Andrew are speaking at the Food Blogger Conference tomorrow. It's virtual. The link is in the chat box, so you guys can definitely join in there. Our next episode is going to be about content optimization, and so we will send out details with the recap next week to everybody that registered. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope everyone has lots of corned beef and Guinness today, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have
Bye,
a safe
everyone.
Patrick's Day.